If you want to find out if you're a hustler or a CEO, then just go on vacation. Do not tell one person, leave for the next 90 days. And if you come back and there is more money in your bank account than when you left, you probably own a business. If you have less money in your bank account than when you left, you own a job. And by definition, that means you're a hustler. What that means is that you have to do things in the business. You don't get to do things in the business.
Welcome to the Raquel Show. This show is for entrepreneurs who want to play bigger in business and in life. And today I have a very special guest who some of you guys may have heard of because I know I talk about him in some of my previous podcast episodes or in my masterminds. He's a mentor of mine in my journey that I am forever grateful for. It's interesting how sometimes when you're in a room, you don't actually know what you're learning. And years later, it all starts to click. It was one of my most valuable experiences I had when it came to my journey. And I know this guy is going to bring so much knowledge to you guys. He is one of the smartest people and marketers that I know that truly cares about his inner circle. He's built and scaled multiple businesses, lost it all. He also rebuilt another massive empire, rebuilt it all. He's a prominent investor, and I just saw this with over 10,000 successful flips. He does masterminds, and it's those rooms that you definitely want to be a fly in the wall or get yourself into. He's got lots of wisdom, and I cannot wait for our community to get to know you. Welcome to the show, Kent Clothier.
Thanks for having me, girl. How are you?
I am amazing. Thank you for your time. I want to dive into it. You have like such an extensive background. So in a quick snapshot, for those that don't know you and who are probably listening to this in the car, on the podcast, or watching on YouTube, if somebody was to ask you, what do you do, Kent?
Wow. Look, I mean, you said it. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I started my first business when I was 17 with my father in the grocery business and arbitrage business, and was very fortunate that throughout my 20s, built it up to be, the better part of a couple $2 billion by the time I left there in annual sales, and then spent the next chapter of my life, as you touched on, kind of losing everything for a couple of years, having to start over, getting into real estate, had my back against the wall, didn't have really any place to turn. And then as I learned how to wholesale and do a few things, all that business experience started kicking in and turned a real estate investing operation into a really big operation. And then ultimately my family now runs a very large operation called REI Nation, based out of Memphis and Dallas, and flips about 1,000 properties a year, manages about another almost 8,000 properties a year. And we've got over here on this side, we've got our education company that's educated, 60,000 people or so. And we've raised a few $100 million and done a lot of investing on this side. And, I kind of keep my finger on the pulse and keep driving the industry forward and keep trying to motivate and inspire people to let them know that, hey, a redneck like me out of Dallas, Texas can do it, then anybody can do it.
That, first of all, like those are some big numbers. And I'm sure people are asking like, okay, was it like the first billion, his back to the wall? Like, how do you like mindset wise, like lose everything back to the corner? And then what would you say to that entrepreneur that's kind of struggling right now, or that has highly leveraged business and is wondering if he can make payroll?
We've all been there. Anybody who is worth their salt in business has definitely suffered. You may not hear about it, and it may not be posted on social media, but I can assure you, anybody that I've ever known, and certainly the guys that I run around with, whether it's Ed Milet or Jesse Itzler or Bedros Keuilian or Dan, I mean, everybody, including you, have gotten kicked in the teeth and knocked down, and definitely had those moments where we weren't, we didn't have the answers, and we weren't sure what the next day, much less the next month or next year held. But we kept fighting and we kept pushing and we sought out the advice and wisdom of others. And then we acted with urgency. And look, I mean, I've used this analogy before, but the easiest way I could describe it is through this analogy. And if I picked up the phone and I called you, Raquel, and I said, hey, I've made a decision in my life at 53. I want to become the greatest MMA fighter in the world. I want to be the champion, right? I want Dana White to put the belt around my waist. And I think I'm ready for the title fight. Here's what I've done. I've read every book. I've listened to every podcast and I've watched every YouTube video. And so now I think I'm ready. You would be like, you've lost your damn mind. And
Have
you'd
you
be
gone in
right.
the ring?
And so what clearly must happen for me to be great is I must get in the ring. Now imagine for a moment, if you are new going into MMA and you step into the ring for the first time, there's one expectation that you clearly have, and that is you are about to get punched in the face. And your opponent is going to try to kill you. They are trying to choke you out, break bones, bruise you, bloody you, do everything they can to hurt you. And but that's the expectation. You expect it when you walked in the ring and you expect those things to happen. And in spite of that, you keep moving. And then when you do get knocked down, bloodied, knocked out, whatever, you go back to the corner, talk to your coach, maybe even go watch some film, whatever. And then you get back in the ring and you do it. But you never had the expectation that I would never get hit. And I think that a lot of times when people come into business, especially new business owners, they just never expected to get hit. And that's just unrealistic. That when you're getting hit, by the way, if you are going through tough times, this is the good stuff. This is how champions are made. This is exactly where those muscles of resilience and perseverance and drive and determination. This is where all those muscles get formed and so when, I say it a lot from stage, like this, when things are challenging in some screwed up way for me personally, I look forward to it because I know it is where greatness is born. This is where I get to prove that I am one of the greats. And I will tell you, and I would encourage everybody who hears this and watches this, that one of the most powerful things that I say to myself in those moments is, this is where my competition will quit. This is where they give up. And this is that moment. And if I just don't give up, then I get to beat my competition because they will. I can count on my competition's mediocrity. I know they will fail. I know they will give up. Most people don't have the guts to keep going. And you kind of repeat that stuff and find that resilience in you. I promise you, you may not see the value of it in this moment, but your future self will absolutely appreciate you fighting now.
So good. Yes, where challenges occur, character is built.
No doubt. No doubt.
A lot of people think, and you kind of alluded to it, is like entrepreneurship could be very sexy. And in a world of real estate, we have a lot of people that are making a ton of income. And you talk a lot about this, where are you making income or do you actually have a business? And you say that there's a difference between making income and actually building a business and building wealth. Could
Right.
you elaborate on
Yeah, I mean, look,
difference,
I say it all the time. The big bridge to cross is moving from hustler to CEO. And no different than you, I have met hustlers at every single level. I've had hustlers come into me that are making $5 to $10 million a year. I've had a billionaire that I've coached that would define himself as a hustler. The hustler is very simple. If you want to find out if you're a hustler or a CEO, then just go on vacation. Do not tell one person, leave for the next 90 days. And if you come back and there is more money in your bank account than when you left, you probably own a business. If you have less money in your bank account than when you left, you own a job. And by definition, that means you're a hustler. What that means is that you have to do things in the business. You don't get to do things in the business. And the CEO, when done correctly, of life and business, is the person that has all the systems, the processes, the leverage, the reporting, the people. Everything is in place where this thing is going to operate and function and produce revenue and income, whether I show up or not. And me showing up means I get to do the things that I love. I love to do marketing. I love to, write copy. I love to inspire and push people. But I don't have to do it for the company to make money. I get to do that. And that's the big gap, right? And so when you get into, certainly in the real estate space, you've got a lot of people and they have to go generate the deals, or they have to generate the listings, or their personal production is a huge component of the revenue.
Mhm.
I mean, you might own the components of a business and you might have a good team, et cetera, but there's some gap that has to be navigated to where you have the option of showing up or not. And until that's done, then again, you don't own a business and you don't own time and you don't own your freedom. You own a job.
And that's what everyone's after, right? Is like freedom. The reason why we build businesses is to, enjoy our time. And you're one that invests in a lot of different business. You got your hands in a lot of different things. You invest in projects, you invest in other people's businesses. How do you know, especially at your level of the game, like where to invest your time and ensure that it has adequate attention to all the things that you're a part of today? Because like
Well, I
you
haven't
have
always
Mhm.
been great at it. I will tell you the very first kind of epiphany that I had to have personally was I had to understand that the clock is ticking. And, in the history of the world, nobody's ever gotten out alive. So everybody has an expiration date. Everybody's clock is ticking. Everybody has a certain amount of time left on this planet. And so I became extremely dialed in on that. I'm going to get everything out of every one of those days that I have left. And so that was kind of the North Star for me, for lack of a better way of saying it, that, all right, if that's the way I feel about business and life, and I want to spend all this time with my little girls, and I want to spend the time with people that I care about, then I'm going to make sure that the businesses that I have allow that one thing to happen. I definitely don't want to get into businesses where operationally I'm now required to do things. And again, back to the point I was making earlier, it becomes a job. And
Mhm.
so once that became a driving force inside of me, and it became kind of the driving force of our core values of our company, then the team members we put around me now, I have, very, very, I'm not going to say capable. I have exceptional people around me that look at the world the same way I do. And any kind of new opportunity that comes our way, whether that's real estate or whether that's private equity or whatever it is, we have the characteristics of that we're looking at. Okay, what is our leverage points? What are the ways that this is providing value to us and our investors, and not only from an income standpoint but from a wealth standpoint. And then what is the requirement? Is it sucking resources or sucking time out of it? Is it not in alignment with our core values? Because if it's not, then we're out, right? That's a non-negotiable. If I've got to go in, if I'm being asked to invest in something and I'm being asked to, fly out to Dallas, Texas every month to be at a meet, that will never happen. That's a box that, that will literally, I don't care if it's $100 million deal, that will never happen. And
I can
so,
tell you that's facts, knowing this
yeah, I
guy.
mean, the boxes must be checked at the core value level first and foremost, right? Are these people I want to spend time with? Are these people that inspire me? Do I believe in what we're doing? Do I believe in where we're going? Is it in alignment with the way we feel about time and people? And if all those things take place and we're making money, well, that's the recipe for a great situation for us.
So good. You talked about team. And I saw one of your posts where you learned over time to hire up. And there's a lot of people that are probably listening to this. They always think about hiring down. When did that click for you? Because I know that's one of the biggest like game changers to business when I'm consulting other like teams and looking at their leadership team, especially.
I will tell you exactly when it clicked because you were a part of it. When we went out and hired the caliber of people that we were hiring at Cribs, including yourself, that was a big eye-opening thing for me, because I think you'll agree that at the management level, we went out and invested heavily with the
Mhm.
people that were the very best that what they did, right? And that was a big departure for me historically, right? I had never really gone down that path. I'd been encouraged to do it, to just go get the most talented people that you can get, and then let them build. And up until that point, no different than a lot of people that are listening, I had fallen into the trap of inevitably, again, unknowingly, it wasn't a conscious decision, hiring people that were fitting a role, but they weren't necessarily better at that role than I was. In other words, they didn't necessarily have a better relationship, so they couldn't necessarily sell better, or whatever the case may be. And so inevitably what happens is when you hire people that are at par or down a few notches, well, who do you naturally think they're going to turn to? They're coming to you for the coaching. They're coming to you for the
Answers.
management, et cetera. And so I'm effectively putting myself right back in a role where I'm still managing. And so Cribs was, for all the ultimately the thing didn't work, but there was a lot of very valuable lessons learned along the way, including the relationship that you and I developed. I will tell you that having that level of talent around me at the executive level was really, really eye-opening for me. And it changed me forever. So from that point forward, I have never hired down. I've always gone for the top talent in whatever business I'm going into. Who's the best in the industry? How do we get them? And then let them go build out their organization with our core values and our belief systems in mind. And that has worked marvelously. Now, the big gotcha is that not every business is at the season where they can afford to do that, right? So you have to realize what season, as a business is coming off the ground, you can't always do that. But once you get it to a place where you can hire really, really talented people, it's a game changer. Hiring a VP of sales that is much better at sales than you could ever thought of being, right? Or hiring a director of operations that absolutely understands operationally the way the components need to fit together and the reporting and the KPI, like those people make a huge difference in an organization.
Did you have to change anything internally or mentally or like raise your leadership? Because as I'm thinking about, who's listening to this is like, yeah, it's one thing to go get the people, but it's also another thing to actually lead very talented
Mhm.
people.
Yeah, of
Did
course.
you
Yeah.
have to
I mean,
do?
look, leadership is an evolution.
Yeah.
It's not a static thing. And for sure, to this day, I continue to evolve as a leader. I like to think that I'm better today than I've ever been, and hopefully not as good as I'm going to be tomorrow. But I definitely had to adjust my role to understand that a few things. Number one, math is the language of business. Once everybody agrees on the math that drives the business and what people will be measured to, then managing high achievers becomes infinitely easier because it's a language we all speak.
Mhm.
And if I know, again, marketing has very specific metrics that drive that business. We know that sales has very specific metrics that drive effort. Again, a lot of times people get caught when it comes to sales in particular that how do I know where we're doing good or not? Well, it's reflected on the P&L and revenue. No. Sales is not about that's a lagging KPI. I
Mhm.
want to measure effort. So everybody agrees on the math, and then the visionary leader and the integrator are driving those numbers, and everybody's empowered to get it done, and everybody's being held to account if it's not getting done. And my role is what's the vision? How are we going to get there? What's on the path 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now? What are the strategies and techniques and that we can have line of sight on today that'll help us achieve our goals? And then our team is responsible for
Oh,
performance day in and day out. This is what it's all about. And as a leader, you've got to be, my role again is much more in alignment with I'm the one painting the vision. This companies are a direct reflection of my beliefs. And so
yeah.
making sure everybody understands what we're trying to accomplish is a big deal.
Yeah. I think the another important thing, and I love how you say that the CEO always stays ahead, right? And one thing that I think I've learned over the years is the CEO is also responsible for allocating the right resources. And you did a really good job at that. It's no different than a portfolio that's underperforming. You're going to switch it out, flip it out, whatever you need to do to deploy, into a better asset. And I think CEOs do the same thing with business, but I don't
Yep.
think a lot of people understand that when they are managing a team and really looking at a business as a business.
Well, I frame it this way. Very similar to the thing I was telling earlier. Whether it's a person, whether it's a marketing campaign, whatever it is, am I doing this out of obligation or am I doing this because I'm excited about doing it? In other words, if my sales manager, like or VP of sales, am I excited about what they're driving, the initiatives they're pushing forward, where they're trying to take, all the things they're bringing to the table to push this company forward? Or am I in a situation where I'm tolerating this because I'm obligated to this individual, or it's the way we've already always done it? We have some sacred cow in our business that, this is the way we've always done it. So we're going to keep and I think, as a leader, it's your job to identify the sacred cows, identify the quote unquote things that you are somehow emotionally obligated to, and root those things out as fast as possible. And you should be surrounded by things, or it's your job to try to get surrounded by things and initiatives in the organization that excite you and drive you, and you can see the future. And it's why they call it a visionary. Like, you want to see your vision come true.
Yep. And speaking of like vision and all the exciting things, people see a lot of the highlights on social media, right? And you kind of touched on it earlier, and I'm sure that there's things that in your years of investing and building companies, things didn't go as planned. What role has failure played in your entrepreneur journey?
It is the most valuable. I think I talked about this recently on a social media post, that it is the most undervalued asset that people have. Like, I have learned infinitely more from failing than I ever have from succeeding. And I know that's kind of cliche to say, but at 30 years old, I was running a $1.8 billion a year company, right? And had never failed in my life. From 17 to 30, had built an absolute empire. And then walked out of there on March 14th of 2000. And by December of 2022, I was bankrupt. And that failure, falling down like that, was the absolute worst thing. I would not wish it on my worst enemy, because not only was it financial, but it was emotional. Like, every friend, every relationship I had was wrapped up in this company. All of my personal relationships were inside of this company. I was at the top of this industry, right? And so my dramatic fall from grace was very, very public in this industry. And all of that was gut wrenching and heartbreaking. I mean, I was suicidal when I was going. It was very, very bad for me. And then ultimately, when I had nothing left, less than $5,000, and found my way to go to a real estate investing seminar of all things. If you had told me that any of that I would ever look back on fondly while I was going through it, I would have told you you're crazy. Like, this was the worst of times in my life. Going through a divorce and all, it was really bad. But I look back on it now, and it's the greatest thing that ever happened to me. And I'm so grateful for what happened there, because the humility was breathtaking, but the resilience that it taught me, and that, things that I believed would kill me, as silly as that sounds, but when you're in it, you don't even realize, if I lost everything, if I had to go bankrupt, if I lost my house, like, oh my God, we position it like these are life and death situations, and they're not. And when you realize that those things don't define you, it's how you react to them that ultimately will define you, and what your kids are going to witness, and your fight that's inside of you. And that gave me so much more power as a man, as an entrepreneur, as a husband, as a father, as a son, as a brother. It made me so much better, and made me willing, again, not to do risky things, but to believe in myself enough to bet on myself even more. Because now I knew that I have what it takes. Like, I got punched, I got knocked out, but it did not kill me. And now I know I've got what it takes to become great. There's literally, I don't live in fear of any of it now. I am more than willing to bet on myself over and over and over and over again. I don't care what anybody thinks. I don't care about social media. I don't care. If I believe in something, and I'm passionate about something, I will go all in and do whatever it takes to make it the best that I can make it. And that is a very, very powerful weapon.
Yeah.
Especially in business. That kind of mindset, I think you would agree that the tactical part of doing the business is probably the smallest component. It is literally about the mental fortitude, how hard you're willing to go to get something done. How hard are you willing to fight? That's the difference between good and great. That's the difference between mediocre, average, marginal, and unbelievable success that most would never even dream of. And having that muscle, you can't get that by reading that in a book. Like, you're
No.
gonna have to be willing to get hit to learn those lessons.
What drives you today, Kent?
That, I didn't come this far to come this far. I have no idea what the future holds. I certainly could take my foot off the gas at any time, because of what we've built. But I believe I am perfectly designed to inspire and push people and show them and demonstrate to them what's possible and share a lot of knowledge now. And I want my little girls every day to see me pushing hard and making my own, whatever self-limiting beliefs I have left, just fighting right through them. And that to me is look, my why is pretty straightforward at this point. I think everybody's got one, but for me, if I were to pass tomorrow, knowing that thousands of people would get on an airplane and fly in here and come to my funeral just out of one thing, to come up and walk up to my little girls and say, your dad mattered.
Mm-hmm.
That's a life well lived. And so I push for that every day now.
Oh, I got chills. Looking back at your journey, if there was one lesson you wish you would have learned or known earlier, what would it have been?
It's a great question. I would have known earlier. Well, from a financial perspective, I think the earlier that somebody actually takes the time to understand, I'll throw you a curveball here. When somebody actually takes the time to educate themselves on the financial system, or to educate themselves on what really goes on in building wealth, and how it's a slow burn, but the components that you can put into place today to create, effectively and uninterrupted compounding interest over time. Like, when we're in our 20s, we're invincible. We've all been there. Nobody's thinking about the future. Nobody's thinking about what's going to happen when you're in your 60s. But getting money working for you early, as often as you can, right? Getting into, whether that is investing in passive income, cash flowing properties, or private lending, or just cash flowing assets, or getting into Senate, whatever it is, right? Having enough wherewithal to do that consistently, as you get older and you start to see the compounding effects of that over time, it is how real wealth is created. Real estate is a magnificent arena to do it in, and we all have access to it. But unfortunately, as you know as well as I do, just because you have access doesn't mean that you're actually in the game.
Yeah.
And I run into people every single day that are doing, millions of dollars in transaction, have invested nothing into actually real estate.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that, looking back, having the patience and wherewithal to buy more along the way than I did. I mean, if I had done that, then I'd be a billionaire now, right? I mean, it's just one of those things where all the right ingredients were in place, but I was just not necessarily focused on the right things.
Yeah. And speaking of focus on the right things, how important, so for those that are listening, right, they're like, okay, that's nice, Kent. I'd love to kind of learn about that. How important are coaches, masterminds, mentors to your growth, or to learning something like that?
I mean, I think it's, honestly, how much I believe in it. It's everything. I would not be where I am today without my mentors. I would not be where I am today without masterminds. I would argue that both are needed, right?
Right.
And so, because we live in a day and time where information is everywhere. Again, between YouTube and podcasts and all this stuff, I mean, we can all gather a ton of information. And hell, now Chat GPT will do most of the thinking for us. So we're just getting dumber by the minute. The reality of it is there's a massive, massive difference between information and insight. And information is, if I'm driving my Tesla down the street and the thing just dies, I'm sure I can whip out my phone and go and look on YouTube or whatever, maybe even look up the owner's manual and try to figure out how to get this thing going, right? And probably be there all day trying. Now, if a guy drove up on a, AAA tow truck and parks next to me and says, Hey man, I see this all the time. I know exactly what to do. There's a couple little things I just need, a couple little buttons I need to press inside there, and I'll have you up and running. But it's $1,000. But I'll have you running in 5 minutes. That's the difference between information and insight. I can go look all day, get all the information I want, but I want the guy or I want the girl who knows the exact buttons, the exact playbook to get me the results as fast as I possibly can.
Mhm.
And when you surround yourself with a collection of people and their collective wisdom, years, decades, if not centuries of wisdom gets poured into you very quickly. If you're in a hurry to collapse time, if you're in a hurry and your time actually matters and you have the resources, the single best thing you could do is get a mentor that will give you the playbook and show you how to get the results faster. The next thing you can do is get into a mastermind where you have an entire collection of people
Mhm.
and from a variety of different angles, and have in all likelihood they're solving the same problems in real time. Connecting those dots, it's the single biggest thing that has driven me as fast as I've been able to drive in my life. Because it's, if I was just banging around and willing to pay the price through my own brain damage to get there, I'd probably get there at some level. But I'm in a hurry. I
Mhm.
want to wring everything out of life as fast as I can. It's much more important to me to go take that 8-minute walk every morning with my little 9-year-old girl to her school and be able to do that and not think about business than it is for me to write a check and have somebody show me how to go create $1 million like that.
Right.
I'll write the check all day.
100%. I couldn't agree with you more. What's next for Kent? What are you most excited about that you're working on?
We're continuing to grow our portfolio of companies. We're continuing to grow our portfolio of real estate assets. And I think we have a very clear vision for where we're taking our mastermind and through the, another decade. And I'm very, very excited. I think that my vision has expanded. I used to say that I wanted to have the best real estate investing mastermind in the country. And now I can confidently say I want to have the best mastermind in the world, because I believe that we are, as an organization, capable of doing that. And I've challenged our team to start making a lot of that a reality. And so I have clear line of sight that we're going to bring some seriously cool changes to this industry. I'm excited about it.
That's cool. What are you investing in currently that you could share? I've seen a bunch of things
We
online.
uh we are a part of a group that is doing some hospitality projects, including a Pendry and a Montage here out in California, and then a Four Seasons residence in Vegas. And then we've got several multifamily projects that we've recently invested in. I'm probably the side of the industry I'm probably the most excited about as it relates to investing is we've been doing a lot of self storage, and it's just a sector of the business that with my partners we are very, very excited about. I've got some guys that have been doing it for a very long time, and the numbers are ridiculous, but more importantly, the lack of noise,
Mhm.
the lack of us operationally having to get in there and mix it up is just very exciting when you compare it to a lot of the other stuff we have to do, when it comes to whether we're doing ground up development in industrial or multifamily or whatever, or single family. We can come into a facility and effectively bring it out of the Stone Age and bring it into the 21st century and create the kind of value that we can create in the local market and ultimately for our investors. It's a very cool sector, and it's very hot.
Love it. There's one thing that I've learned is get around really smart people that are taking action. Where can people connect with you?
Oh, the easiest place is online. I mean, just go to my Instagram at Kent Clothier, or Facebook, same. We are very active on there and happy to engage there. And if there's anything we can do to help, as you know, we're always there to help and get people on the right path. That's for sure.
And as we wrap up, there's always one question that I ask every guest that comes on our show is what does Kent do to play bigger in business and in life?
We've kind of already touched on it. I take a lot of pride in my circle. I take pride the fact of the people that I spend time with. I'm very, very stingy with my time. I'm very specific with my time, and I won't waste it on people that aren't worth my time. And so I make a point of spending time with people that matter, people that are thinking bigger, people that are, as the saying goes, show me a millionaire and I'll show you a frustrated billionaire. Well, I hang around with a lot of billionaires and a lot of people that play at a very high level that are amazing people. They're not any different than anybody else, but they're big time givers, and they're big time people that, want to share their journey with me and want to continue to inspire me. And so that's what I do. I get around people that lift me up.
I love it. Well, Kent, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being on our show. I super, super appreciate you, and I'm always grateful for you, your family, because you have definitely played a role in me playing bigger and creating this community.
I'm here for you. Thanks for having me.